Welcome to Kiss the Reviews. I'm Armando. That's Corey. And today we're doing 1976's Alice, Sweet Alice.
AKA, Mama, these white women is crazy.
No doubt. We talked about, I forget what movie, because my brain doesn't work like that anymore. I forgot what movie we were talking about, but they are it might have been the McAllisters. These people, especially Annie and Catherine, are the two most gaslighting bitches of a family I have ever seen in my life. And the kids, too, for that matter.
Is it possible this story is true? Yes, it is.
So every woman in this movie is fucking insane.
No, they're all
and
crazy.
I don't mean like, I told you bitches is crazy. Like, they're legitimately all got psychological problems.
100%.
Every single one. And it's only the men that have any kind of rational thought or can take any kind of just eat. Like, now, I'm not emotional. I'm going to solve the death of my daughter today.
Yes.
The phone rang. I can't answer the phone. I can't handle it. Take it, Dawn. It's the phone. Like, get the fuck out of here.
That's how those movies were written back then. And part of me found this. I know this is like a horror, crime, drama, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me laughed the whole way through because of that. Like, I saw this more as a comedy now.
100%.
But a buddy of mine, this was a request, a steeply paid for request.
Yes.
So it kind of jumped the line, but my buddy said that he saw this when he was young. Now, if you're young, Catholic, and you watch this movie, like, I don't know, let's call it in the 80s, when you're super impressionable, he said this movie completely messed him up. And I don't doubt it. And I'll get into why. But now, looking at it back, there's a lot of humor to it. But I'll save all that for the actual review. Let's get into the cast. And before we do that, if you want to follow me and Corey on Twitter, you could follow me at Junior D's. You could follow Corey at Corey_Idol. Or you could follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok. We just added the TikTok channel.
Shit. What up? What up, youngsters?
And you can follow us on all three of those apps, sites. However, if you're old, you're using the site. If you're young, you're using the app. So if you want to follow us on any of those, you can follow us at Kiss the Reviews on all three. So
right, fellow talkers.
Let's get into the cast of 1976's Alice, Sweet Alice. This film stars Linda Miller as Catherine Spages, Mildred Clinton as Mrs. Tredoni, Paula Sheppard as Alice Spages, Brooke Shields as Karen Spages, Jane Lowry as Aunt Annie DeLorenze, Niles McMaster as Dominic Spages, and Rudolph Willrich as Father Tom. I read a few things on this, all right? Because I've never seen this.
Time out. Don't lie to the people. You don't read shit.
I actually did on this because I was told that this movie was banned back in the day, like in the 80s. I think it got banned.
Really?
In multiple countries. But I started looking into and reading about a lot of this. And the one thing that jumped out, because Brooke Shields plays Alice's sister in this. And this was billed as like a Brooke Shields vevehicle. She's in it for she's in it for 5 minutes before she gets, spoiler alert, murdered.
5 of the most annoying minutes ever put on film.
I will say this. She did a great job of acting like the biggest spoiled brat I'd ever seen on camera.
Oh, yeah. This being so heavily rooted in Catholicism.
Yeah.
This was a very pro-schmortion ad. It just happened to last an hour and 48 minutes.
Yes, exactly. And if you're looking into viewing this, I think it's only available on a few apps. Redbox has it for free, I think. And you can watch the full-length movie on YouTube.
Hell yes.
I'll put the link below so that people can click on it and view the movie if they want to.
And if you're looking for abortion services, you can call Armando at the number listed below his face.
There you go. So let's get into this movie. This movie opens in 1961 New Jersey. It's already a horror flick. And after church, Catherine takes her two daughters, Alice and Karen, to see Father Tom at the rectory to discuss Karen's upcoming first communion. Alice asks to use the bathroom and instead puts on a creepy mask, scares the shit out of Mrs. Tredoni, the rectory maid, apparently. And she's like on all fours, scrubbing floors and doing whatever, and she scares the shit out of her. And this is 3 minutes into the film. And I already have a don't do that.
Don't do that, it's not good for you.
Hi, parents. We already see in the first 3 minutes of this film that Alice is fucked in the head. So, with that said, when she puts on the creepy mask and scares the Mrs. Tredoni, don't go, hey, don't do that. What you need to do is get this girl some help, because we see later on in the movie, they've discussed sending her to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or whatever, but apparently nothing ever gets done. Just an FYI, Catherine, your daughter needs help. Just get her some help.
I think your daughter needs to be put out of her misery. She is nuts. And you know the mom is completely disengaged from whatever is actually happening in reality, because her first thing is, oh, take off that silly mask. No, bitch, you put on that mask if you're going to fucking kill people. 100%. That ain't a silly ass mask.
100%.
Let me put it this way. I don't care if you're fucking 10, 14, 100. I wake up in the middle of the night and you are standing over me with that mask on, you're going night-night, cuz. It's 100%. Over.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Fuck those
And I'll
masks.
be like, oh, the silliness of it all. I'm sorry. No, fuck you. You wear that mask to kill human beings.
Yes. And after getting back home, Alice steals her sister Karen's doll, lures Karen into an abandoned building where she locks her in a room for literally like 5 seconds as Karen loses her mind. And Alice threatens her so she doesn't tell their mom.
I'll be honest with you, I would have let Karen out in about that same amount of time, because the shrillness of her shrieking.
100%.
I can't imagine what it was like for Alice being on set having to listen. Like, I'm sure the thing was just like, leave her in there for 5 minutes. And Alice was like, I can't fucking do it. Just open the fucking door. Too much.
Way too much. We're then introduced to their fat pedophile landlord, Mr. Alfonso, who apparently has COVID because he's coughing his ass off during this first scene. He gets into this back and forth with Alice, calls her a little bitch. She calls him a fat tub of shit or whatever. And that's all she does throughout this movie. Now, pedophile, bad. However, if you're a big boy, like Mr. Alfonso is, and this girl does nothing but call you a fat tub of shit every time she sees you, you're allowed one time to push her down the stairs of your apartment complex.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying.
Corey's life lessons.
Hi, fat landlords of the world. Uncle Corey here. If you're checking in at about 5 or 6 bills, you got nothing but cats surrounding you, you listen to opera all day, mascara and other various eye makeups aren't going to solve the problem. Get the fuck out of your house and take a fucking walk, you fat fuck. I just kept looking like, why is he wearing mascara? There's no reason for that. That doesn't help highlight the features you think are going to improve your situation.
I totally disagree with everything you just said, because I didn't notice the mascara. What I noticed was his disgusting yellow teeth, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. That and his stained clothing that he wore.
Well, plus like Mark Wahlberg in the movie Rock Band, you are in a rock band. So I imagine mascara is a large part of your wardrobe.
Not mine personally, but I typically don't notice it anymore.
It's a large part of his wardrobe.
We then get to First Communion. And as all the girls are walking into the church, Karen can't be found. So Annie, who is Catherine's sister, sends her daughter, Angela, to go find Karen. We finally see Karen in line as they're like doing the whole procession in, and she's jumped by what we're led to believe is Alice. She's choked out and is stuffed into one of the church pew benches and is then set on fire.
Corey's life lessons.
Hello, murderers. Uncle Corey here. This scene is so believable that it's Alice because it takes Alice, or the murderer, 5 to 10 minutes to choke a 4-year-old girl. If you're an adult...
She's probably 12.
You were right.
It still took you a very long time to choke out a very small little girl.
Yeah.
Let's say that. So if you're an adult and it took you that long to do that to Karen, stop murdering. You're not cut out for it. It's
you're
not your bag.
You're not good at it. And when we find out who the murderer is, she's not good at it.
No, she's not. But they really do a very good job of setting this up because I'm like, Jesus Christ, Alice. Like you escalated quickly.
Immediately, yeah. And I was bought into, I mean, the goddamn name of the movie is Alice, Sweet Alice. Alice is crazy by all accounts leading up to this. So it's like you see this and you're immediately there with Alice. And so you're along for the ride. That's the one thing I did like about this movie.
And that's where this movie takes a really close look, really puts the microscope, the magnifying glass on American society that they would so quickly accuse this little girl. No, man, that bitch did that shit. I was convinced.
100%.
And I don't care what anybody says.
100%.
Fuck your evidence. I still think she did it. I think she fucking brainwashed Tredoni.
What's not believable here is during this whole mess and the whole communion thing and the girl getting choked out, the old ass nun saw Karen's body being dragged across the floor during the whole procession and things and does or says nothing. I call bullshit on this because these nosy ass, bitch ass nuns aren't going to let a moment go by like this to yell at somebody for ruining a church service. And believe me, take it from somebody who knows. She just sat and watched like, there's a kid's body getting dragged across the floor. I mean, we'll wait until the service is over. A nun, an old nun especially, will ruin a church service over that.
Fair enough. And he, as he said, he knows because he's seen many of children's bodies being dragged across many a Catholic church floors during a service.
Yes, it was mostly
every single time a nun broke it up.
It was mostly the priest going, "Does this smell funny?" And then a kid's body getting dragged across the floor. So all hell breaks loose here. Everyone rushes to see the burning body. And then it cuts to Alice, who is shoving Karen's communion veil into her pocket. Catherine's ex-husband, and also the father of these two girls, comes back to town for Karen's funeral. There are also cops outside of the funeral, staking it out. So I have a couple of things. First, the cops are there in this scene for one reason and one reason only, and that's exposition. Who's that? Well, that's the father. He's divorced with her and remarried, but he's coming back for the kid's funeral. And like, you get that whole thing. And two, I have a don't do that.
Don't do that, it's not good for you.
Hi, family members. If you're helping your sister, your brother through the death of a child, don't be an asshole like Annie is in this situation, because Catherine sees her husband. She gets out of the limo, the car that's, at the funeral place or whatever. She hugs him. She cries because her kid was just murdered. The husband embraces her. And then bitch ass Annie's in the back seat of the car. And she starts yapping her gums about, don't want to rush ya, but the service starts at 9.
I don't want to rush you, but Mass begins at 9.
If I'm Catherine in this situation, I'd be like, listen, we're in our 40s. it seems. You've been pulling this dog shit for 40 plus years. I'm sick of you. Get out of the car. And you know what? You're not invited to any function moving forward. That's just a shitty thing to do.
Yeah. Her sister is probably one of the worst human beings I've ever seen on film. And I'm including like Jigsaw, Freddy Krueger.
I line her up with Mommy Dearest. Like she's at that level. Like, you know, her daughter Angela gets the crap beat out of her at home with wire hangers every night. After the funeral, there's some contention at Catherine's place as Dominic and Catherine discuss the murder of their daughter, and Annie keeps butting her nosy ass into this conversation. She starts implying that Alice had something to do with the murder. And listen, it's their daughter. They don't want to believe it. Let's let them get through the grieving process. They still got their dress clothes on from the goddamn funeral. Can you shut your mouth for 2 seconds and just let the parents grieve and try to figure out who the murderer is?
You were right.
If your nature is to just run your fucking trap when you get nervous or uncomfortable or scared or whatever, that's fine. But understand that when we're talking about people's dead kids, the day of the funeral, shut the fuck up.
Dom then goes to see the detective looking into Karen's murder. And the detective asks Dominic if he could speak to Alice about what she may have seen or may not have seen. And Dom doesn't like where their line of questioning is leading. So he just gets up and bounces.
Yeah, and I do have to offer this as just a point of reality.
Corey's life lessons.
Hi, parents. Uncle Corey here. If your child is accused of a murder or anything that they need to talk to the cops about, and they say, we'd like to speak to your child, and you go, well, I know where this is going, and you're not allowed to speak to Alice. Ha 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 ha. You didn't outwit them. They're just going to arrest your fucking kid and hold them for 24 hours. You have no say over what actually happens.
Yes.
So what you should do is say, yes, because I am confident Alice is innocent. My attorney and her will be happy to report to you whenever you would like them to. Yeah. Thank you so much for asking. Instead of, you're not talking to my daughter. No, they're the cops. They're pretty much going to do what the fuck they want to do.
Yeah, at this point, there's a murder. So you just step aside. Good on you for walking in and offering some help in the whole situation. But also, get the fuck out of the way and let the cops do their thing and investigate your daughter's murder. Afterwards, Father Tom and Dominic start investigating Karen's murder on their own. And Father Tom reveals that the cops took paperwork from the school, including all the ones that had stuff about Alice being crazy and talking about a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever.
And fucking Starsky and Touch are on the goddamn case here.
Starsky and Touch. I like it. We then get more of Annie gaslighting Alice and Catherine after Alice drops a bottle of milk in the kitchen. And Catherine then gives Alice a rent check to take to Mr. Alfonso. When things get even creepier, because when she gets to Mr. Alfonso's apartment, he takes the check and then attempts to rape Alice, or at a minimum, sexually assault Alice, until she grabs one of his cats by the neck and like tosses it across the room. And you know, listen, this is a good move by Alice. Okay, this isn't a don't do that.
Brilliant.
This is a totally do that. She kept her, you know, because she's crazy, she kept her wits about her and was like, I need to do something here. This is going to go poorly for me. So she's like, oh, he's a crazy pedophile cat guy. I'm just going to strangle one of his cats. And by the way, back in the 70s, you know that shit was real. There was no She choked the fuck out of 4 cats for that take.
Hoo-ah.
This was one of the more disappointing scenes of the movie for me. Just because it started off and it's progressing and it's progressing. And then she grabs the cat and she breaks its neck. And I'm just like, oh, I was so close.
Hey-oh!
have another problem with the scene before this when they're in the kitchen and Annie, listen, I'm not like, hey, you need meds, take meds, blah, blah. I'm not pushing meds on people, but Annie needs some fucking meds. She needs a Xanax or she needs something.
Oh, yeah.
But so Annie's, gaslighting this whole situation and Alice. The question I have is, and this is for both the landlord and Annie, you both suspect that Alice murdered her sister, but you're going to gaslight her when there's a knife that she was holding, and then you're going to try to rape her when you know she already murdered her sister. She don't give a fuck about, she's been calling you a fat prick this whole movie. But you guys are going to push the situation with somebody who you think is already murdered her own family member.
What the hell do you know?
At this point, I'm kind of torn because I think Alice is a murderer.
Yes.
Especially of like her little sister, which is some Cain and Abel type shit. But at the same time, I'm kind of rooting for her to kill the landlord and all his kittens in front of him.
Yes, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to go like Dark Ages on the landlord.
Yep. At this point,
kind of her aunt.
Yes,
like I was
100%.
Like if she fucks her aunt up, I'm gonna be okay with that. Like, and this is, I think, the most important tip to anybody wanting to commit a murder out there. Which is just choose who you're killing. If it's somebody universally hated, like the aunt here or the pedophile landlord, most people be like, oh, damn, they're murdered. Has it been 48 hours yet? Because we ain't solving this fucking thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not even going to try. They're going to go to grab a couple Boilermakers and call it a day.
Yes.
So just choose your victims better.
Alice then goes and takes Corey's advice. She goes to the basement to visit her very disturbingly creepy shrine, puts the translucent mask on, goes upstairs and stabs the shit out of Auntie Anne. Or did she? And by the way, the fact that her name is Aunt Annie in this ruins my opinion of Auntie Anne's pretzels, and that's disturbing for me. I don't like that.
Sorry, man.
So I feel a certain way about Auntie Anne's pretzels now.
If you become an Arizona trash bag, you can call them Hot Sams, and it's all fair.
Father Tom and Dom show up because Annie runs outside. It's pouring rain. They get Annie in the car. Father Tom takes her to the hospital as Dominic stays behind to find Alice. He finds her in the basement. She cries about Karen wanting her gross doll back, and you're led to believe right now, like you're still in this Alice is doing this mode. But what I was also, I thought that, here's where I thought Angela, Annie's daughter, was doing. Like I started to branch off and started to have different theories. Because I was like, there's no way she gets to the basement, closes that door, and is in there in the span of time, maybe. But because Annie was so adamant about it being Alice, I was like, she's protecting her daughter. Anytime anybody's that crazy about one thing, I'm like, bitch, you got some shit to hide.
Right. Well, you must have been really torn when Alice's mom at the hospital goes fucking ham on everybody because eyewitnesses are telling the truth.
Yes. Yep. Here's the funny thing about this whole hospital scene. So Annie's in the hospital. She's got stab wounds all over. Catherine's there. Now they're sisters, and Catherine loses her, basically tells her, don't drop dime on Alice to the cops. And then when the cops come in, Annie's hysterical. Her cuck of a husband comes in, and he's just, oh, baby, what's going on? Somebody help her. And she immediately just screamed, like, it's Alice, and they're just having a screaming match. And she's just like, don't do it. It's the whole scene. I really liked it because everybody's in hysterics. And you want to talk about 1970s old school, like horror drama.
Oh.
Everybody is in hysterics, except for the detective. And the detective's literally, like, I think he's an Italian guy because he was just like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like,
yeah, this is basically when I started realizing in the movie that Oh, this is almost more of a statement on women in the 70s. Because they are all literally, as Armando said, hysterical. Even the cuck husband, the most feminine guy in the movie, loses his shit. It's only the macho men who listen to the village people that are like, we've got this. I am a macho man. I will solve this case, detective.
You were right.
And this is what happens when you do this, people from the 1970s. I'm talking to you motherfuckers, because this is all your fault. Because now today, we've overcorrected where we celebrate mediocrity. Because, women, fuck that, dude. Make a better fucking movie and quit blaming us for the shit these fucking assholes did. I didn't write this shit.
Not this time. It never happened.
And look, before I get fucking added on every fucking social media site we got, I ain't talking about the Catherine Bigelows of the world. They earned their shit. They are fucking amazing, talented storytellers.
Yes.
I'm talking about the mediocre people, and you know who the fuck I'm talking about.
We then cut to Alice getting brought into the police station and being hooked up to a lie detector and questioned. And when asked who stabbed Annie, Alice says it was Karen. And apparently that was not a lie. So Alice is then subjected to a psych eval administered by Dr. Whitman. She tells Alice's parents that Alice is schizophrenic, dangerous, and possibly the killer from I Know What You Did Last Summer. So she's got to stay in the building for further examination, because if we find fish in her pockets or like the little hook thing, she's guilty of these murders and the murders of Cape Cod or wherever the hell I Know What You Did took place.
She's Ghostface in the new Woodsboro killings. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I love the psychiatrist's mic drop here on the mom. The mom's like, everything you're doing and saying is preposterous, and you're all pieces of shit. My daughter's an angel. Yep. Oh yeah, then why the fuck didn't she tell you she was menstruating, sucker? And the mom's face drops.
Yes.
It is amazing. That's how you mic drop, kids. That's how you bury a lead. Just to pow right into fucking mom's face.
So Catherine and Dom are at Catherine's apartment. They're discussing who the other possible killers could be. And then the phone rings. It's a heavy breather. And then Catherine's hung up on. And the caller, as we see, is also wearing a yellow slicker. And Catherine thinks it was Annie on the phone and possibly the killer. Dom thinks it was Annie's daughter, Angela. So now I'm totally confused, because these are my two best guesses. And I'm like, well, cross them off the list, because if it's here, they're not the killers.
You were correct. It's fact.
All I could think about was when they were making out on the couch. And then she picks up the phone and it's bum, 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 the new wife. Fucking Lose Yourself came right into my head. Like, oops, snap back to reality. Oop, there goes gravity. Because he went from like this to that real fast.
So Dominic goes back to his hotel. He gets a phone call from a crying Angela saying that she ran away from home. Her mom's a crazy bitch, and she needs Dom to help her. She asks him to the abandoned building where Alice scared Karen at the beginning of the movie. Dom gets to the building. He sees the Gordon's fisherman, and so he chases after it, and he gets stabbed in the shoulder, then smashed in the face with a brick. And when he finally wakes up, she then ties him up, and before rolling his body out the window or whatever to his death, she reveals her face, and it's Mrs. Tredoni, bum, 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 as she screams about horrors and premarital sex and things. This is one of my favorite scenes, and not because of the stab, the brick, the pushing him out the window. Listening to this old woman scream about horrors and premarital sex is one of the funniest scenes in this movie.
So before we get to the big reveal here.
Yes.
This is a cautionary PSA. One of the biggest PSAs I've ever given to anybody out there, ever.
Corey's Life Lessons.
Hi. People that have been stabbed in the clavicle. Uncle Corey here. One, quit pursuing your attacker. Let him go. And two, when you are approaching this attacker for whatever delusional blood loss reason you think this is a good idea, you don't have to say, you don't have to be afraid of me. They're not, because they've already stabbed you in the clavicle. Quit being ridiculous.
100%.
His
100%.
only move here is to get the fuck egress out that motherfucking building as fast as humanly possible and bring people with guns and badges to take care of this problem. But instead you're like, honey, I can't move my left arm. I have massive nerve damage now for the rest of my life. Don't be afraid of me. She ain't. She never was.
No, she's about to fuck you up with a brick is what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Best get the fuck out of there. Never go to the secondary location.
You were right.
And that brick hit looked rough. I audibly went, ooh, that sounded disgusting. And
that's what I do love about 70s horror films. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of these murder scenes, they're cringy in a good way. Like you're just like, oh God, my God. Like everything looks so goddamn real because they had to use all these practical effects to get the shot.
And I have one quick question before we move on here. I've started to notice a pattern, much like the JCVD brother conspiracy theory we have here.
Yeah.
What happened in the 70s where throwing people off buildings into just an empty plot of grass full of glass was such a thing? Like it happened in Prom Night, it happened in this, it happens like 3 or 4 different 1970s movies where at some point a character is tossed off of an abandoned building into a pile of glass.
This one makes sense to me because we're talking about New Jersey, 1961 New Jersey. I pictured 90% of the plots of land in New Jersey, even to this day, maybe it's like 80. But back then, 90, that's what the plots of land looked like. Just broken glass all over the place and just a perfect window just to drop somebody out of. So I think that's just 1960s Jersey is what that is. Fair enough. The next day, Catherine goes to the rectory to look for Dominic because she knows that him and Father Tom are like Scooby-Doo and Shaggy now. So Mrs. Tredoni brings Catherine into the kitchen where she's preparing dinner. There's a weird back and forth here, and Mrs. Tredoni reveals that she had a daughter that died on the day of her first communion, and she like oddly points the knife, and it's like, listen, if you're murdering people, you know what you don't want to do is get caught. When you start waving around a knife and pointing it in her face, like you had somebody touch your no-no place, before you got married, and you start shoving a knife in their face, they're going to be like, I'm pretty sure this bitch killed some people.
Yes. And if I may add on to that, as an extension, don't say maybe Saint Michael will come along and take another one of your souls or had to take yours. Like she's saying some rude shit that you're like, oh, you're a crazy person that probably murders kids, because that's the kind of thing people who murder children say.
You were right.
And this is also, too, where we start to realize a little bit more that it's not really that. She's not cleansing Earth of the horror. Yes. And she wants to fuck the father.
Yeah.
She's in love with Father Tony Baloney.
And the Monsignor, who's like crippled.
Oh, yeah.
And old.
Yeah.
So after Dom's murder, Alice is cut loose from the psych ward and Catherine takes her home.
And in another brilliant parenting move, decides to lie to Alice. Why are you intentionally trying to fuck this kid up?
Yes.
Every action the parents make in this movie toward Alice is designed to create a sociopath.
So Mrs. Tredoni goes to their apartment complex here to kill them. And she bangs on the door. They're not home because they went to church. And Mr. Alfonso comes out of his rape den or whatever. And he is pissed because of all the banging. And this is the most New Jersey thing ever. Like, hey, shut the fuck up out there. And he ends up getting himself killed because she's coming down the stairs. She's got the mask and the slicker on, so she gives him 2 treaties, and then she's out the door. So the movie ends with Father Tom helping the cops to arrest Mrs. Tredoni. And during communion, Father Tom tells Mrs. Tredoni to come with him. He'll take her to the police. She screams more about whores and stabs Father Tom in the neck, killing him. Alice then snags Mrs. Tredoni's little bag of goodies, and she walks out of the church and pulls out the knife and smiles.
This is my last piece of advice for this movie.
Corey's life lessons.
Hi, civilians. Uncle Corey here. Quit trying to do police shit when you ain't police. You know why? Because everybody in this movie who tries to play detective and isn't a detective dies. You know who doesn't die? The fucking police.
Yes.
Stop doing that shit. You ain't the Hardy Boys. You ain't Starsky and Touch. You ain't Scooby-Doo, motherfucker. This is ridiculous. Do not do that shit.
You are 100% correct. And I will say this regarding that, is they didn't have our channel back then, because the intranets wasn't a thing. To get those pieces of advice. I think we've saved a lot of lives moving forward.
No, we really have, especially considering like modern day Georgia and Mississippi are basically the 1970s.
Absolutely.
So we're really trying to help the modern day South.
Yep. But so thoughts on this movie, because because I'd never seen this, in a weird way, I loved this movie. Just, it had a very 70s feel to it. There were those weird cutaways to shots that seemingly had nothing to do with the movie or the plot. This whole movie, from the script to the way it was shot, using the noises that they use and the volume of sounds, and the score to like drive the movie along, was so very 70s. It had a very Exorcist, Black Christmas kind of feel to it, and I love those movies, obviously, and that's what made me love this movie. And they made it an actual mystery, because it took me a while to figure out who the killer was. Like, the writing there was awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys out there, I know Armando doesn't for the most part, but I don't know if you guys out there watch any of these lists, like greatest horror reveals or 10 greatest this, 10 greatest that. Like Watch Mojo and that kind of shit. And this reveal is typically number 1 on those lists.
Yeah.
As like the greatest horror movie, killer reveal, twist, whatever, ever. Is it great? Yes. Because I did not see it coming in any way, shape, or form. And I'd never seen this movie before this. But I had seen that. So like once I got like the slicker and the mask, I was like, oh, I remember somebody old in this movie actually being the killer. I have 2 problems with this movie. And literally 2 problems alone. And most of those and these 2 are cosmetic by and large. 1, the coincidence, I guess, of Alice and Tredoni both having the fucking mask and the slicker. Like, did she get the idea to start killing because Alice scared her in that? And that's when she decided to don that? Or was this just a prevalent thing? Because Karen has a mask at the beginning, Alice has a mask at the beginning, and then Tredoni's walking around in a mask.
Yes. So those are all great questions. I think she wanted to murder, but like apparently didn't know where the local Halloween store was. But I think she got the idea for the mask because Alice kept fucking with her at the beginning of this movie, and she was like, fuck that shit. I'm gonna get a yellow slicker, I'm gonna get that mask, and I'm gonna start killing bitches. I'm gonna start killing some whores around here, because Ain't nobody got time for whores. That's when the whores come in.
So it's almost like Tredoni was, as part of her big plan here, her master plan was to basically wipe this family out, but also pin it on Alice.
Yes,
so the family is
100%.
destroyed. Okay, cool.
100%.
Then I'm with it 100%. No coincidence, makes perfect sense. My second thing is, Tredoni keeps going on about how she's been tasked by Saint Michael, right? She either is or she has been tasked by an archangel to wipe this family out in service of God. That is what she has convinced herself of.
Yeah.
Yet she is terrified every time she's in the middle of one of these acts and like gets caught. Like, you know what I mean? Like she's very paranoid. She's very spooked. She's sitting in the church and she's terrified. And if you've ever seen these crazy fucks or read anything about these crazy fucks, especially the ones that believe they are ordained by God to carry out this task, much like the fucking Crusades, they don't have that fear.
Much like the Crusades and the Blues Brothers.
We're on a mission from God.
I think it's mask versus no mask. I think because she's a Christian and she's a blah, blah, blah. Like, she's in the mask, she's doing the murder, she's down with all of that.
How does she do the murders?
She does it like this.
Okay.
So, she does the stabby. Is this better? So she does the stabby stab.
Perfect. It felt great.
She does the stabby stab, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm in real life now, and now I'm a Christian, and those things are bad. I'm not supposed to be doing these things, but I am whatever it is, ordained by Saint Michael to be his murderous maid or whatever the hell." So I think there's like the duality at play with her character, but that's just me.
I think you explained away both of my questions great, and
there you go.
I have no problems.
Yeah.
To sum it up, I guess, I'm like you. Part of me thought this was fucking hysterical.
Yes.
Like, absolutely laugh out loud funny. The other part of me, trying to put myself in a 1976, watching this before there was a Halloween, before prom night, before really a lot of the slasher genre. Maybe Sleepaway Camp had came out. Maybe.
I think Sleepaway Camp, Texas Chainsaw, some of those had come out prior to this, but by and large, the slasher films were all after this.
I would have been blown away seeing this in 1976, seeing 100%. It in 1980.
That's a great point, because that's what I thought. I was like, if you're looking at it at 2023 standards, this does not hold up at all. No. It's a comedy. This is like Tucker and Dale is what this movie
it reminded
really
me of
is.
like John Waters and Roger Corman got together to make a horror movie.
Yeah. So, you can't base it on 2023 standards. But I put myself either as a child, like 10, 12, watching this film in the 70s or in the early 80s, or as an adult in the 70s. Because when this came out, we talked about the whole backlash about The Exorcist and some of these films that came out, especially when it revolves around the Catholic Church. Because, the Catholics don't play any of that shit. But when I read, and I told you earlier that it was banned in the UK, 100%. Because of it was like the Video Recording Act of 1984, something along those lines. This movie, along with a bunch of other movies, were deemed as video nasties. That's what they were called in England.
It's a video nasty!
And it all revolved around, you can't have multiple murders, not just one, multiple murders in a Catholic church. You can't have like all of the religious overtones to this and all. They wanted no part of it.
No.
So
there is just one thing and one thing alone you are allowed to have in a Catholic church.
And that's touching little boys. Yes. So that's one of the reasons why I really like this. When I found out it was banned and the reasons why and all that, like that made me really love this movie. But setting it back there, like if I saw this back then, you're fucking horrified.
100%.
But yeah, all in all, dude, I thought this was a fantastic film. And I'm not a huge believer in lists, but if we're putting movie lists together, I will absolutely add this to like that slasher genre in my top whatever lists, especially for that time period. It's fantastic.
Yep. I'll go then to a different area of the list genre, which is, I would put this on as one of the best reveals or one of the best twists in a movie.
Absolutely.
Now, for me personally, is it Kaiser Soze? No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is it John Doe and What's in the Box? No. Is it close though to that? Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yep.
You ain't beating Kaiser Soze. It's not happening.
No, that shit floored me.
Yeah. It's up there with like I See Dead People and The Village.
Yes.
Like, okay.
No, they're good. They're
good twist. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I thought it was a good twist.
This is what's the problem when you're like Armando and I and you're ageist, is an old woman trying to go around killing people, ranting and raving about whores, as he said. It's fucking hilarious. You're not going to kill me because you beat me up.
Yeah.
Old lady, you're going to kill me because I'm laughing my fucking ass off and literally can't run away from you.
Is it possible this story is true? Yes, it is.
Do you have anything else for this?
No.
All right. For Corey, I'm Armando. This is Kiss the Reviews, and this was 1976's Alice. Sweet Alice.